Ladies and gentlemen, that is the official notification from the University of Chicago that this meeting is being recorded. Give it just about one more minute.
Just pin yourself.
Oh yeah, I know how. I just put a fuse on.
Good evening. I'm Mika Hoffman-Zoller. I want to extend a warm and heartfelt welcome to you. Thank you for sharing a Zoom evening with us, honoring the internationally acclaimed violinist Barton Pine, and showcasing our powerful program for bringing a high-quality orchestral experience to a fabulous group of students. I have been a member of the board for 6 years and have served on the executive committee. My daughter was a cellist in the Hyde Park Youth Symphony when she was in high school and middle school. And when she went to college, her time with the Youth Symphony was so meaningful that she continued to pick up the cello. This is what we hope for all of our students, a love for the experience that endures. I personally support the Hyde Park Youth Symphony, and I hope that you will as well. You can support us online at thehpys.org. I know you will enjoy our time with our honoree, Rachel Barton Pine, which begins right now. We will get to see some highlights from a master class that she conducted with our students last week. Then Rachel will offer a performance just for us. We're very honored of this gift from our honoree. And then Rachel has generously offered to answer questions from our audience tonight. And I want to especially encourage our young people to come forward on this. Thank you all. And I'm going to turn this over to Matt Shepard, our music director.
Thanks so much, Tamika, and thanks everyone for being here with us this evening. As Tamika said, my name is Matthew Shepard. I've had the absolute joy of being the artistic director of this incredible organization for the past 6 years. Every year, every rehearsal, I'm really amazed at the commitment and the growth that all of these young musicians here at the Hyde Park Youth Symphony show. It's been truly an inspiration to be a part of it. From our oldest, our most experienced members in Youth Symphony, all the way to our brand new members in prep strings and in our community brass band program, these HPYS musicians show the power and the importance of what we do with your support. Even and especially in a year like this, that value really shines through. In fact, at last week's rehearsal, we had one of these beautiful mission moments, as our board co-chair Linda Shapira likes to call them. After months of gathering together at 6 feet and 10 feet distances and wearing masks and using specially made bell covers over the wind instruments, using way more hand sanitizer than I ever thought that I'd need to use in a rehearsal, we were 5 weeks away from our first performance since March, so 8-9 months. And then the pre-Thanksgiving COVID spike necessitated that we pause all of our in-person gatherings. So we had one last opportunity to play together as an orchestra. And my colleague, Dr. Lindsay Wright, and I let students know that we'd record that rehearsal, including a couple run-throughs of the music, even if we weren't quite ready 5 weeks out from the concert. So fast forward a little bit, just last week, during our first Youth Symphony Zoom meeting, we played back one of those recordings. It was an arrangement to the overture to Die Fledermaus by Johann Strauss. And As we were playing the recording for the students, I could see the apprehension on their faces. And I could see it slowly turn into smiles and into amazement at what they had accomplished by playing together with artistry, even at this distance and even weeks before our planned concert. The students kept typing in the chat, "I can't believe we sound that good. I could never hear anything in our rehearsals." And I could just see that sense of pride, that sense of accomplishment, and that recognition truly of their own power as a diverse community of artists. It was absolutely palpable in that moment, even via Zoom. And creating that community really takes the involvement and commitment of a much wider community than just the Hyde Park Youth Symphony staff. It takes an incredible and dedicated board of directors. It takes an inspirational and generous leadership circle and a huge network of supporters across Chicago and beyond. People like, for example, William Lee, who is one of the finest luthiers, violin and string instrument makers and repairers in the country, and who works in our very own backyard and has absolutely wowed us with his generosity in helping to remove roadblocks to access for students, giving them the opportunity to play on higher quality instruments that they don't have to fight to make music at every turn. And other partners like the absolutely indomitable Pastor Thomas Barclay, who we worked with to establish our first community brass band program to provide free brass instrument instruction to students who otherwise wouldn't have access to it. And partners like the University of Chicago, St. Paul and the Redeemer Church, and First Unitarian here in Hyde Park, all of whom have been incredibly generous with their support of both space and resources that are so meaningful and critical to small nonprofits like ours. It's through and by this support and through the support of each one of you here tonight that we can come together week after week, whether we're in person or via Zoom, and bring together diverse students from the South Side and beyond to provide this high quality orchestral performance experience and education. And that's why we do what we do. And we are absolutely delighted tonight to recognize and honor someone who has been positively a champion for the values of artistry through music, of creating more seats at the table, and of the power of youth music education, Ms. Rachel Barton Pine. With a life and career dedicated to these values, Ms. Pine is a role model and an inspiration for our students in our organization and beyond, and for organizations just like ours. And we are just so grateful for her generosity and her leadership in these shared mission and values. Over the past 2 weeks, our HPYS students have had the chance to work with Miss Pine, an international violin superstar. How cool is that? Via a virtual masterclass to ask her questions about music and a couple questions about life in general, and to learn from her incredible life in the arts. So tonight, before we hear directly from Ms. Pine, we wanted to give you, our audience, our guests this evening, a chance to see what it was like for our students to meet with her via a Zoom masterclass last week, to see and to hear what the students learned in this amazing experience. We wanted to show you the full 90 minutes, and I kind of had to be talked off of that because, trust me, every minute was worth it. Tonight, we've cut it down just a little bit to compile some of the greatest hits from last week to share with you all.
Thinking about sections where you have to increase your speed, I've been working on the section for the longest time, and I feel like I've kind of reached a cap at how fast I can get it. So I've tried all of the different techniques, all the repetitions and the rhythms and all types of different things. So I was just wondering if you had some technique.
Let's say I was playing a perpetual motion type piece. So one thing you can do is one beat always overlap to the next beat. So if it's groups of 16 notes, you could do 5 notes. Now you can't play the whole piece at that tempo, but it'll just for that little tiny little burst of energy, it'll make you play just that beat super fast. And then next beat. and maybe playing each beat more than once, like I just did. But a few of them, and then a few of the next beat, a few of the next beat. All right, bravo. You seem to be making very nice musical lines. The one big problem is that you have probably an overly high percentage of random out of tune notes. And the other thing to always bear in mind, whatever it is that you're practicing, whether it's a bow technique or your intonation, whatever you're practicing, basically you might start your day here, and then you'll end your day here, and then your next day you're probably not going to start here. You're going to start somewhere in between, and then people will think, oh, I didn't practice well, it's not where I left it. Well, that's actually normal. All right, so if you can just clean it up, intonation primarily, a little bit of coordination, and then put it back together and just sing like you were, then it'll be a really excellent performance.
What is your way of dealing with things when you have trouble with the music?
That's a great question. How do I deal with things when there's a real challenge before me? Well, of course, you have a teacher that you trust and ask them, what you should be doing, and not having any expectations. There are some things that come easily to you and some things that don't. And I had something called up-bow staccato. It was the worst technique that I ever attempted. I couldn't even do it at all. Every note I had to try to squeeze my bow, and after about 3 months of working on it for half an hour a day, I was like, after about a year, I was almost mediocre. After about 2 years, I was barely respectable, and it took another couple of years for me to be passable. And now I actually have quite an excellent staccato. It's not one of the world's greatest, but it's something I can be proud of. And it's not my best technique. My best technique is actually something I was able to do the very first day I tried it, which is bouncing my bow for 3 downs followed by an up. Paganini Caprice number 5. I won a bunch of international prizes for that stupid caprice, and everybody thinks it's super impressive. But in a way, I don't think it's any more impressive than having red hair. I think my respectable staccato is far more impressive because of all the effort I put in to get from 0 to that. Okay, lovely. I really liked your phrasing. So I can see you've got some vibrato going on. If you think about it, it's like a singer. A singer would never go, right? They would just sing and their voice would vibrate. But we're not so lucky with our string instruments. We're lucky because we don't have to worry about taking breaths. We can play if we have a cold. We have lots of advantages over singers. But when it comes to our vibrato, we have to do it with our brains. So over 15 years, we collected more than 900 pieces by more than 350 Black composers from the 1700s to the present day. And we have been taking that music and turning it into various pedagogical series of books so that you can learn this music alongside your regular repertoire at every step of the way. But also, we've started creating repertoire directories for more advanced players or professionals so that they know what exists for their instrument and can go and get the music. And it's really exciting to see this music starting to get more recognition and starting to get out there. And the biggest gratification is just how many people are excited to hear it. And there's absolutely no doubt that this stuff is of the highest quality, and it's just, finally starting to take its rightful place, which, enriches all of our lives, but also spreads the message that classical isn't somebody else's music, but it's everybody's music. There are things about Zoom that are less than ideal and not up to the standard of in-person gatherings, like our ability to hear every subtle nuance of tone and dynamic and everything. But in a way, we could look at it as an opportunity. It actually forces us to exaggerate some of what we're doing. And quite frankly, that kind of exaggeration is actually what we need to be doing on stage when we're performing, because the person in the 20th row is not getting those subtleties. In fact, I would love to be able to know that you're doing a piano, even if I had earplugs in, just by seeing you go like this, and then seeing you go like this, and then seeing you go like this again. So really give us that stage kind of show with it.
Just amazing. You can see what an experience for our students. And that was just 7 out of the 90 minutes that we had with Miss Pine last week. So again, a huge, huge thank you. And it's hard to find the words to express our gratitude for your generosity. So now, ladies and gentlemen, it is your turn to experience her live. It is my absolute joy to present in performance our honoree for this evening, Ms. Rachel Barton Pine.
Hello, well, it's so great to be with you, and thank you so much for your support of this wonderful organization. It's been a joy to get to know them a little bit and to work with the students, and thank you, by the way, to the young people who just consented to let footage of the masterclass be shown to all of you. I know it's a daunting thing, especially when that was last week's playing, and I'm sure you've improved a great deal this week, but it was really fun for all of us to hear. Okay, well, I thought I would start off by playing a piece that is one of the most famous in the violin repertoire, but this will be maybe very fun to actually watch over Zoom as opposed to in a concert hall, because it has so many cool violin techniques that you're going to get to see up close. It's the 24th Caprice by Niccolo Paganini, where he really took the violin to the next level, coming up with pyrotechnical tricks that no violinist before him had ever attempted or thought possible. And he really expanded the range of what the violin can do. So with a lot of practice, this is what you can enjoy and have fun with. All right, that was Paganini's 24th Caprice. Well, next I'm going to play a couple of pieces by two of the great black composers from history. The first is Samuel Coleridge Taylor. He's from England. His mother was an Englishwoman and his father was from Sierra Leone, and he became renowned as a violinist, conductor, and particularly as a composer. He wrote lots of different symphonic music, chamber music. His oratorio, Hiawatha, for many decades was the most performed oratorio in the world, beating out even the Handel Messiah, if you can believe it. And he was often referred to as the Black Dvorak or the African Mahler, which, of course, in those days was a high compliment. And over in the U.S., where things were not as far along in terms of opportunity, many African Americans formed their own classical music organizations, and they would often name them Samuel Coleridge Taylor Societies after their hero. Coleridge Taylor, though not having any African American heritage, was very inspired by spirituals from this side of the pond and decided to write a number of concert spirituals, elevating that music for the concert stage. And in this version of Deep River, you'll hear the beloved melody at the beginning and end, and original music of Coleridge Taylor in the middle. He said he wished to do for the spiritual what Brahms had done for the Hungarian dance, and Dvorak for the Czech music, and Grieg for the Norwegian music, and so on. Booker T. Washington wrote the foreword to Samuel Coleridge Taylor's collection of spirituals, calling him the greatest musician of our race. And he did finally visit America at the invitation of W.E.B. Du Bois. Well, somewhere along the line, Mr. and Mrs. Perkinson were also inspired by Samuel Coleridge Taylor, and they named their son Coleridge Taylor as his first name. Well, that's quite a mouthful, so he always went by Perk. But Coleridge Taylor Perkinson, at the end of his career, was the music director right here in Chicago of the New Black Music Repertory Ensemble, which is the performing arm of the Center for Black Music Research, which was the premier such facility for many decades. So I had the great fortune of getting to work with him on his music at the end of his life, and it was so amazing to have known him. So I'm going to start with Deep River by Samuel Coleridge Taylor, and then play Louisiana Blues Strut by Coleridge Taylor Perkinson. That was Louisiana Blues Strut by Coleridge Taylor Perkinson, preceded by Deep River by Samuel Coleridge Taylor. And before I finish off, I just want to say again how important it is to support our youth orchestras. We're very blessed in Chicago to have numerous top quality youth orchestra systems. I mean, so many places I travel around the U.S. would be lucky to have just one system of the quality that we have so many, not just in our city, in our region, but in different of our neighborhoods. And each one is an important part of the tapestry, serving a different constituency and a slightly different mission and providing opportunity for so many children. I have lately been personally observant of how important youth orchestra is in the life of children through my own daughter, and just seeing how wonderful it is for her every week to get on Zoom and learn from the great teachers, but also just be together with the other kids who also are studying music and love it so much. And my husband is a great example of someone who grew up going to youth orchestra every week and did not become a musician, but it definitely instilled in him an understanding of music and a love of music that he carries with him to this day, which is equally important in our lives. Speaking of my husband, he actually comes from the South Side, whereas I grew up on the North Side, Western and Irving or thereabouts, and my husband comes from slightly south of Hyde Park in the Jackson Park Highlands, so I started to get to know the other half of the city when I started dating him in the late 90s. And now we live downtown in neutral territory. So just to finish off, since this is a local organization, I think it would be very appropriate for me to play one of our favorite Chicago tunes, Sweet Home Chicago.
Just wonderful. Can we have another quick round of applause for Ms. Rachel Barton Pine? That was so fabulous. Thank you.
All right. I just switched to my internal microphone, which I think will be better for talking. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly. Coming through loud and clear. Thank you.
All right.
Well, that was just fabulous. Thank you so much. I had goosebumps. Okay. Pulling myself together. Our students had a chance to speak with you earlier in the week and ask questions, and not unexpectedly, they had more questions than we had time to ask. But we had a number of them who have submitted other questions and would love, especially after hearing you play like this, we would love to have a couple answers. So anyone else who's in attendance, if you have any questions for Ms. Pine, please feel free to send a direct message to me in the chat. And I can't promise that we'll get to them, but we'll keep track and we'll try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. So our very first question comes from Anya, one of our violinists in Youth Symphony. So Anya, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, we're ready.
Yeah. My question was, why did you start playing the violin, and was there something that inspired you to play?
Great question, Anya. So I started playing violin when I was 3. I saw some middle school age girls playing violin in my church, and they were wearing the most beautiful long dresses. But I just loved the sound of the violin, and I just became really intrigued and begged my parents for lessons. And finally that summer, they had heard that there was a teacher in the neighborhood a few blocks down the street. So they said, oh, what the heck, I guess you could try it out. And I just became obsessed. All I wanted to do was play the violin. And I think the reason when I was 3 or 4, I just, I love the violin, but, couldn't really articulate it so well. But now that I'm looking back, it was a number of things. I loved, just the interesting aspect of, getting better and better and playing more and more complicated pieces and seeing my fingers move almost like being an athlete, but just the beauty of the melodies and the tone of the instrument. I'm sure I didn't have a great tone at age 4, but still, just the sound of the violin for me was really something that spoke to my heart. And then once I started performing, which I first did in church, and then obviously moving on to the concert stage, playing music for other people who were listening to it and seeing how the music could move them and uplift their spirits, then that was the biggest motivation of all, knowing that my music could really do something positive for people.
Thank you.
Fabulous. And our next question comes from Ratheen, who is another one of our violinists in the Youth Symphony. Ratheen, go ahead and unmute yourself and take it away.
Thank you. So I saw some of your metal music covers on YouTube, and I was wondering, since heavy metal was primarily meant for the guitar instead of the violin, do you make adjustments to the classical violin technique to accommodate for the heavy metal style?
Yeah, totally. I actually have a whole class that I teach of how to make all of those plugged in sound effects on your unplugged acoustic bowed instrument. Things like distortion, which is moving very close to the bridge and pressing your bow down. So instead of a clean sound, you get that kind of, and then you can get feedback sounds, but and then of course the pick slide, like you saw me do in the Sweet Home Chicago, where you swipe your hand down. Very different physical technique than a classical glissando, that kind of thing. So I have a step-by-step process, just like learning any other technique. You actually have to do these things slowly, know exactly what your fingers and arms are doing, and practice it over and over. and then once it becomes a good physical habit, you can rock out. Some teachers might be like, uh-oh, if we're making all these scratchy, squeaky things, is that going to mess up the classical technique? But no, you make a thick, warm sound for Brahms, and you make a floaty pastel color for Debussy, and neither of those messes up the other. So this is just one more color in the palette. But actually, what's really interesting is that a lot of the great rock guitarists have stolen from violinists. Things like that Paganini Caprice that I played. Yngwie Malmsteen said, if you want to really know how to shred on the guitar, you got to practice Paganini Caprices. And one of Eddie Van Halen's most iconic solos His piece Eruption actually references a Kreutzer violin etude. This bit. Of course, that's our number 2 or 3, I think it is. And that's not a coincidence. The famous rock star Eddie Van Halen was literally practicing his Kreutzer etudes on the electric guitar. And I've had the great honor of meeting many of my favorite bands, and it's really been cool to hear them talk about, guys from Megadeth and Slayer, and talk about the Izai violin sonatas, or how much they like Liszt and Berlioz and things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of connections between the two styles for sure.
Thank you.
That was awesome. I definitely, from my vantage point, saw quite a few heads kind of go, whoa, hearing that. That was super cool. Thanks for sharing. Our third question today comes from Maro. So Maro, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask. And full disclosure, Maro asked a couple questions. So he's going to go with question 1, and we'll try to get to question 2 if we have time.
Okay.
I was not prepared for this. Oh, I don't think my mic is working.
I can hear
Actually
what
working
you
very
mean to be
well.
saying.
Yeah, we can hear you twice. So that's okay.
Just go for it. We'll figure it out. You want to type it in the chat?
Hello?
Oh, hello.
Yes. So my first question had to do.
So Maro, I'm going to go ahead and give you an assist here. He already asked the question to me. So Maro's question is this: how do you approach phrasing, particularly when it isn't a super lyrical section?
Well, always by singing. It all goes back to the human voice. I mean, there's occasional contemporary music that isn't supposed to be phrased, sometimes like minimalist pieces, or just if you have a second violin part and you're kind of going, you're not supposed to go, right? You're just supposed to provide a texture for a few bars or something like that. But most things that are a melody should have a shape. And the best way to know what that shape should be is by singing it. You can pay attention to where you want to put emphases, where you want to take breaths. When you're doing it on the instrument, it's so distracting because you've got fingers over here and you've got downs and ups and string crosses and all kinds of things. Executing it gets in the way. So once you know what you want the piece to feel like, then you can figure out how to make that happen on the violin. Like, it's almost like being a mathematician. Where in the bow should I be? So let's see, this part from the middle of Meditation from Thais, if I were singing that first phrase, I would go, I'd want to lean on that G. So, now if I just bow like whatever, I might go, and it wouldn't do anything. So I have to do two things. I have to use less bow, then tuck in my eighth note with a tiny amount of bow, so I have enough bow to have still a crescendo there, but not have that other eighth stick out. And then lean on this one more, and then next note a little less. And then I'm also going to add my vibrato to that by having a little vibrato to start, then letting the vibrato open up. Lots of vibrato on this note, less vibrato on that note. So that all of the physical motions that I'm doing are achieving what I'm feeling inside, which until you've been playing the violin for, many, many years, doesn't happen automatically. You have to plan it all out. And then once you've programmed it into your autonomic nervous system, into your reflexes, then you can let loose on stage and just trust that your body will remember the bow distribution and your brain doesn't have to think about it anymore. Because on stage, it's not about the detail. It's just about the big picture, feeling the music and showing those feelings to your audience. But the only way to really effectively do it is to do all of that detail work in the practice room and to start by singing. Some of us are kind of too embarrassed to sing and when anybody else is listening. So go to some part of your house where nobody can hear you, or just do it softly, but still you've got to do it. You've got to feel it with your body, with your voice. And that's the only way you'll know exactly what it is.
It's fabulous. We had some people in the chat indicating that, your voice might be a little lovelier than some of ours too, but
Oh, no, I don't have much of a voice, but it gets me through a master class. That's about it.
wonderful. Our next question comes from Hannah Shubin. Hannah, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and come right on in.
I really enjoyed your performance tonight. What's your favorite piece?
Well, first of all, do you have a favorite piece?
I don't have one.
But you expect me to, huh? Well, yeah, I mean, my cliche answer is whichever piece I'm performing that week. And that's actually not a lie, because when I'm going to be doing the Brahms concerto, I'm like, oh my God, I'm just in love with the Brahms concerto. And the next week when I do Beethoven concerto, I'm like, there's no greater concerto than the Beethoven concerto. And I kind of have to feel that way and I do feel that way in a way, because it's like, I love them all. And I'm so excited each time I'm going to play one. Now, I wouldn't want to, no matter how much I love a piece, I wouldn't want to do nothing but that same piece every single week. Just like you wouldn't want to eat your favorite food for every single meal. Maybe for a few weeks, it would be like amazing to eat nothing but your favorite food for every single meal all day long. And then after a while, you'd be like, oh my God, this is too much. I miss this and I miss that. So I love variety. The music of Bach is very close to my heart, because that's what I grew up playing in my church and hearing in my church. We even have a stained glass window of Bach in our sanctuary, if you can believe that. So it was a very Bach-heavy kind of worship service. And the music of Bach does bring me to a really spiritual place. And it's, I think everybody's been discovering that for themselves during this pandemic, how comforting the music of Bach can be. But yeah, I mean, gosh, I love discovering, returning to pieces that I've played countless times, and reuniting with old friends. And I love discovering pieces from the past that I've never learned before, or working with living composers on a piece that's never even existed until now. And I just love it all. So yeah, hard. It's like, I don't know, maybe I only have one kid, but I guess it would be like choosing between your students or your children. Yeah, I would feel guilty if I picked a favorite piece, because I like them all.
Wonderful. Our next question comes from Malik, who I think might have been just a little bit inspired by hearing you shred just a couple moments ago. Malik, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Malik. I just wanted to ask, because in one of your interviews you said how you basically made a connection between heavy metal and classical music. I was just gonna ask how you made that connection between heavy metal and classical music.
That's a great question. And actually, for many years, I didn't. I discovered rock and metal when Santa Claus brought me a transistor radio. You guys have probably not even heard of that, but a little, electronic device where you could pick up radio stations and listen on your headphones. And until then, of course, my parents in the car, in our apartment, they had turned on the classical station basically, or maybe the news channel. And so I got this radio and I started listening to all the other music out there on the airwaves. And of course, I discovered pop music and classic rock and all the different things. But there was one heavy metal station that would come on at the end of the dial at 10 p.m. every night. And they would play things like Metallica and Anthrax, and of course, things like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and Black Sabbath. And I was just like, whoa, I love this music. And at the time, I was practicing violin all day long and studying it when I wasn't actually playing it, and just classical all the time. And of course, classical is my first love, but I couldn't listen to classical to relax, because either if it was a piece I didn't know, I would be analyzing how that piece was constructed, or if it was a piece I did know, I would be analyzing how are they interpreting it. And I couldn't turn off the thinking part of my brain and just listen to the music. So heavy metal, I would turn off my brain, not to mean that it's dumb music or something, but I wouldn't have to think about it. I could just rock out. So oddly enough, heavy metal was very relaxing for me. And I thought it was because it was so different than classical. And actually, it wasn't until 20 years later, or sorry, 10 years later, when I was 20, I just played the national anthem for a Chicago Bulls playoff game. And that was in the Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen era. I got to meet all the guys and get their autograph on my manuscript of the arrangement of the Star Spangled Banner that I had created to kind of give it a Paganini flair. And of course, playing at the what used to be called the United Center for 25,000 people is not something a violinist normally gets to do. So that was super fun. Got great seats for the game. And afterwards, I realized that millions of people had seen me on television, and I started getting strangers coming up to me on the street going, "Hey, you played the violin for the Bulls. I never realized the violin was so cool." And that really opened my eyes, because up till then I thought, well, either people like classical or they don't, and that's that. But I realized, no, you can really grab someone with the violin if they just have a chance to hear it. And I thought, okay, well, how else can I bring my violin to people and show them what it's all about? So I started going on my favorite rock stations, and this was now after all these years of listening to it, I'd never played these licks or these tunes, but started playing a little Led Zeppelin, a little AC/DC, a little Metallica, and then I would play some Paganini and some, shreddy classical music and invite people to come to the symphony. And it was so cool because people would be like, "Whoa, the violin is awesome." And then they would come to the symphony and be like, "Oh, I love that orchestra concert." And it was so gratifying to see that people who didn't know that they liked classical music actually could totally be into it. And ever since then, I've tried, to find as many ways as I can to not only play my music for people that already like it, but also to try to find ways to connect with people who haven't yet discovered it. And I think each of us can find different ways to do this in our own way with our own personality, but it's always great fun.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And by the way, the electric violin is another instrument that I love to play on occasion. I have a flying V 6-string, and if you go to the MWROC Music Festival, that stands for Markwood Rock Orchestra Camp, and you look at some of the faculty members, you'll see some really inspiring electric violinists, men, women, black, white, all kinds of different violinists who are doing just amazing creative things with the electric violin and with playing different kinds of music on the violin. And it's really great to see so much creativity out there, people taking the violin to new horizons. After it's been in the world for 500 years, it's still doing stuff it hasn't done before. Of course, you guys must know about some of those other kinds of violinists. There's different pop violinists, there's hip hop violinists, there's anything you can think of, you can do it on the violin, that's for sure.
That's awesome. So inspiring. Thank you so much. We really, again, are just overwhelmingly grateful for your generosity with our Hyde Park Youth Symphony students over the past 2 weeks, and with our supporters tonight. And most of all, for your real leadership in the arts and in music education, in values and in what's important in music education and the arts. You truly are an inspiration and a model for all of us, students and professionals. So please, one more round of applause for Ms. Rachel Barton Pine. Very grateful to you. So as we wrap up and near the close of our evening, I'd like to turn over the mic to one of our hardworking board members, Tashira Hull. And Tashira is there. Take it away, please.
Well, thank you so much, Matt, for that warm introduction and for everyone's interest in the organization. Let me introduce myself again. I'm Tashira Hall. I'm a mom of 2 young girls, elementary school age, ages 7 and 10. You see, we're on the go as we participate in the gala tonight, and in my car, they're in the back saying hi. I've been a member of the board of Hyde Park Youth Symphony for the past 4 years. I also serve on the executive committee, and I live in the Bronzeville neighborhood, and my children are very active, and we are very active in the Hyde Park community. So what do I like about the Hyde Park Youth Symphony? So many things. The one thing that I do like is that we're hyper local. We contribute to the arts and bring music into underserved communities which is so important to youth, especially in these troubled times. We also bring students together across racial, ethnic, financial, and neighborhood boundaries. And despite COVID, we have kept our programs going, a tribute to our amazing students and our artistic team. I personally support Hyde Park Youth Symphony every year, and I hope that you will support us as well. You can donate online by going to thehpys.org and donate. And I'd like to say thank you again. What a great performance. Good night and have a beautiful evening. Thank you.
All right. And so I will just take it away, and thanks so much to Shira. So we've spent a little bit of time with our students in the masterclass snippet and with the question and answer, but I wanted to think a little bit more about our programs from a more zoomed out point of view. And let me just find this slideshow to share before I keep going. Here we go. So, oh, one moment. There we go. All right, so with some images as testimony, I wanted to give a brief overview of our programs, talk a bit about everything we've accomplished this tumultuous year, and end with a few snapshots from our orchestral ensembles as a teaser for a year of performances to come, beginning with our December 17th virtual event next week. And by the way, I'm Lindsay Wright. I started out 5 years ago as a conductor and teacher with Hyde Park Youth Symphony, and now I'm also wearing the hat of executive director, and always the hat of a nerd and musicologist that thinks about musical giftedness and music pedagogy. Since I joined 5 years ago, we have grown from 2 orchestras to an array of groups, and this is everybody together in this picture playing Beethoven. Preparatory Strings is our youngest ensemble, which I think really encapsulates HPYS's unique values. As soon as students are able to play a song, we welcome them into Prep Strings as a way to help them grow as an ensemble player from the very beginning. Here we focus not only on repertoire, but on comprehensive musicianship that offers a solid foundation so they progress through our groups. For one little example, at the beginning of every Prep Strings rehearsal, either in person or virtual, we figured out a way to do it. Prep Strings students collectively compose a rhythm in a particular time signature, which we then sight read and play as an ensemble to practice both reading and counting. Prep Strings more than doubled in size from last year to this year, so which I think is a testament to its value as an early introduction to all the joys and challenges of not just solo, but orchestral playing. The string orchestra is our next ensemble. This is back in the day of masklessness. But my focus with this group, regardless of the year, has been to expand everyone's ensemble skills into a range of vocabularies and techniques. And I was just so excited hearing Rachel present, because one of my big missions in the string orchestra is to think about as expansively as possible about genre. So I pillage the ends of the earth for great arrangements for this group with folk tunes from all over the world, and jazz and blues and pop arrangements. And also we did a medieval and Renaissance tune one year. So every era of Western classical music. Then after string orchestra, and this is our virtual string orchestra, the Youth Symphony is our most advanced ensemble. And when I visit their rehearsals, I'm constantly impressed and inspired by the comprehensiveness of their work together. I hear them discuss the history and the meaning of the music that they're playing. They analyze scores, they analyze recordings, and most centrally, the rehearsals focus on everything from the most nuanced details to very big picture ideas. And always, every year, the level of improvement from their first fall rehearsal to their final one in the spring astounds me, and it makes me want to come back the next year and learn something. We're very lucky to have Matt Shepard as our conductor of that group. And I think it's one of the richest youth symphony experiences in the region. And then we're also, for the past several years, we've started up a very successful chamber music program, which has expanded this year, not just for youth symphony, but also string orchestra players who requested to be able to join. And so I just wanted to give a very tiny snippet of one of our first rehearsals for our string orchestra quartet as a teaser for our chamber showcase that'll happen in early 2021. So here's the and lastly, we're thrilled to be partnered with Progressive Beulah Pentecostal Church in Auburn Gresham, where we worked with a sizable group of students on brass instruments for several years now. And this partnership will only continue to grow as Progressive Beulah looks toward the opening of their new community center in 2022, which will feature a space for our programs too, for music education. I see Progressive Beulah also as a first step toward one of our longer term goals as an organization, which is to reach out to any interested students and families across Chicago's South Side through outreach programs that make it possible for more students to join our orchestras, regardless of financial need or the availability of their school's music programs. And then finally, just briefly, I wanted to highlight not only the high quality and equitable mission of our programs in general, but also how proud I have been of the creativity and resilience our community has shown in this past year. We pretty smoothly progressed into virtual rehearsals back in March, which culminated in our first ever virtual performance, which you can check out on our website if you're curious. And here's a snapshot from the Youth Symphony's performance. And also this year, it prompted us to partner with two really wonderful churches in Hyde Park to offer safe and socially distanced rehearsals that allow us to play together live, which I think we all, at least me, have cherished during a fall otherwise consumed by Zoom meetings, as efficient and wonderful as they can be. So to wrap up, I just wanted to give some very brief snapshots of how our three groups sounded back in early November, right before the lockdown happened again. Before the restrictions were put in place. And we've temporarily transitioned to Zoom rehearsals. Prep Strings here will be playing a piece by Ignatius Sancho, which I was inspired by Ms. Pine's Music by Black Composers project. We arranged it for a tune for us. And then it's also a really lovely comparison moment because both the string orchestra and the Youth Symphony have elected to play different versions of Holst's Jupiter from his Planet Suite. So I just wanted to do a little montage of the three levels here for you. So I'll go here. And so I'll just leave it on that hanging chord and ask everyone to tune in on December 17th, where we'll give a little presentation. But for now, let's see if this works here. Dear computer. Aha. For now, I'll turn it over to our two board co-chairs, Michelle and Linda, just to wrap things up after that. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lindsay. Wow, what an inspiring program. Thank you all so much for joining us as we celebrated the Hyde Park Youth Symphony and its students, the next generation of performers, educators, and advocates of music and the arts. My name is Michelle Seidel, and this is my daughter, Hannah Shubin, and I am honored to be a co-chair of this gala evening. First and foremost, our warmest thank you to tonight's honoree, the acclaimed violinist and clearly incomparable Rachel Barton Pine. We are so very appreciative of your generous gifts of both time and your beautiful music. I hope you get a chance to see the chat and what people were saying while you were playing. And in fact, Hannah, who was doing her homework in the other room, heard you and came in. So thank you very much. Thank you to Matthew Shepard and Lindsay Wright and our terrific Hyde Park Youth Symphony student musicians and their families. And finally, thank you to the Hyde Park Youth Symphony Board and our wonderful supporters. In this challenging time, there are many, many calls on everyone's time and resources. And we are enormously grateful that you have chosen to make our beloved youth arts organization a priority. You all make the magic happen. Thank you. Linda, did you want to add anything?
I just want to add my little note of thanks. I'm Linda Diamond Shapiro. I'm the board chair, and also along with Michelle, the Gala co-chair. And this little youth orchestra is truly my passion. I don't play anything but the radio and my CD player. Nobody in the family knows how to play music, but we love music. And what could be better than having a hyper-local group that brings the opportunity to kids to make beautiful music together. Kids come from all over the South Side and just have this chance to come together and really feel the magic of what music can do. The schools can't provide this anymore, but if we can make this happen for kids, what better gift can we give to our community? So it's just been a pleasure to work with Michelle and Matt and Lindsay and the board, and the kids are phenomenal, and our partnership with Pastor Barkley is an enduring inspiration to me personally and to all of us. So with all of that, I just want to say thank you. We've gotten major support this year. Despite we have been unflagging, nobody's lost their job, everybody's continued going strong, the kids keep playing. So it's due to your support, and thank you so much. Good night.
We'll hang on just in case anybody wants to catch us in the social hour afterwards. But thanks again, everybody.
Okay, I just want to thank you all. That was very inspiring.
Thank you so much. We're delighted you were here today.
Thank you, Linda and Michelle, for your incredible work. And thank you, Matthew and Lindsay, for your work every day. Four of you are incredible inspiration to all of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Liliana.
Ditto. Ditto. Exactly what she said. This is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Cindy. All right, folks. Well, unless anybody has any questions that they'd like to share with us, we'll end everything now. Of course, if you have any other questions, you're welcome to reach out to us at ED, stands for Executive Director, at thehpys.org. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good night.